آمنت بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله واليوم الآخر والقدر خيره وشره من الله والبعث بعد الموت لا إله إلا الله.
Peace, but hold on, that is not all there is to it. Because for me to be feeling at peace is not just, so that is the first step. Acknowledging God and to believe in Him is the first step.
Sure.
But then there are other things along with that as well. There are other responsibilities. So I'm still not at complete peace until I have encapsulated that all in my life.
I understand that, but I think if we're just talking a momentary element, that if you could, there might be other things that invade your mind, worries, concerns that invade your mind, but in that momentary element, if you didn't have that belief that maybe I could be outside of touch with my God, you would actually be at more peace.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, because you wouldn't have that distress, you would be at peace.
Because to me, that is the core of what I believe gives me peace. So basically, it's like you telling me.
No. I think you're distinguishing two different thoughts. I'm saying not that you are believing your God, but the thought that I might not believe in God. That's the thought that is removed.
But aren't they connected?
No, because if you are in belief of your God in this moment, it's just a worry.
No, it's not just a worry. That's what I'm telling you. It's more than that. It transcends all that. You asked me a question as to what will basically give me the most
distress.
Yes, most distress. And I told you this. If that to me is my whole life, then I can just take it out, can I? And then be peace. That is what I would define as my life.
Okay, no. So I accept what you're saying, and I'd say there are other things, but I'm saying is that actually, just on that one thought alone, you have a chance, in relationship to that worry, to be more at peace.
If I've told you repeatedly that this is my life, I cannot just divorce from that, can I? If you told me that your child is someone that you love the most, yes? And if anything happens to that child, then it'll pain you the most or worry you the most. But if somebody told you, why didn't you just take that child away and give it to someone else?
It's not the child, it's the thought.
Oh, hold on.
Yeah, okay.
But here the child is your life. The child is what will worry you. The child is what will pain you the most. That is what your world revolves around. You see what I mean? Now if that beloved child of yours was taken away from you, are you saying that you will still be at peace?
But we're not talking about that. I'm not saying that you're... No. I'm not saying that your God would be taken away from you. I'm saying that the thought that I might not be in touch with my God is taken away.
For you to be not in touch with your God, it's just like you not in being in touch with your child.
No, I know. No. But
same thing.
No. It's not the same thing.
You can be.
I'll try and explain it in relationship to a child.
Okay.
Lots of parents will worry, oh my God, if something happens to my child, what would I do? I'd lose my life, I might kill myself, I might be sad forever. You know, you might have a whole set of thoughts about losing your child. But it's a story that you've made up in that moment because you haven't lost your child. Now, if your child goes missing, you might also have that thought. But whilst your child is in your home or even in your arms, having that worry, oh my God, what if I lost my child, is the same as like, what if I won the lottery? It's imagination. And what I'm saying is that without those stressful thoughts, actually we are more in peace without the thought. Yes, we're going to react. Yeah, does that make sense?
So basically, all you're asking me is a hypothetical question, and if I didn't have that hypothetical thought, then I would be okay.
You've got the hypothetical thought because you're distressed by it.
No.
Yeah, you said the most distressing thing is...
You asked me a question in a hypothetical way, so your question could be realistic, it could be hypothetical,
well,
it could be answered in several different ways.
But the question is grounded in what's your most distressing thought, which is, I might be away from my God. And you do have that, and you react to that thought. You react to that thought in the same way as a parent might cuddle their child more. Okay, so it does have some effect.
So just like where you will nurture and protect and look after your child, yes, Similarly, in my case, it's the other way around. It is my God who nurtures and protects me. So here I'm like basically well, a child, a servant of this master. That without him, I'm nothing.
So I will leave my God, or there's various elements of this thought. I will leave my God, my belief. We know what we're talking about. My God will leave me is obviously another kind of fear, and I won't leave my God. My God won't leave me. Which is true? Which is truer out of those four options? Did you get them? I can repeat them if you want. So I will leave my God. My God will leave me. My God won't leave me, and I won't leave my God.
Which is the most?
Which is the most true?
The most true in my case.
In your belief set.
Yeah, but all of that could apply depending on the.
I know which is the most true.
But this is a hypothetical. You're talking about a situation which I've never experienced.
Well, I would say
the
would.
fact that my God will leave me, that is something inconceivable because God doesn't leave people.
Okay, so that's the most true then.
Why? He will not. The fact that I will leave my God right now, that thought doesn't even appear to me. Okay, so even that is true. What are the other two?
I will leave my God will leave me, I won't leave my God, and my God won't leave me.
I mean, there's some sort of semantics.
But it's not semantics, but it's a way of.
The second one,
it's a way of thinking. Yeah, that God, my God won't leave me, and does that give you more peace?
That my God wants? Yeah, because I know that already.
So when you ask me what do I believe, is that I don't believe the stressful thoughts. I believe, if you've got a thought that is comforting and peaceful, then great. But if you've got a thought that takes you away from yourself, like into your future or into your past, then that can be quite distressing, even though it's not true.
So before you even entertain that question or that thought,
okay,
do you believe in God?
Not in the kind of God of the kind of persons of Allah, the characteristics of Allah or
Is it a personal God you believe in?
It's not a personal God, no.
So what is God in your concept?
Everything.
Everything. So are you a pantheist?
Well, I think that's a label, isn't it? That I mean,
sometimes labels are good to understand.
I'm not sure if that's the accurate label.
I'll ask you to define it.
I would say that every single aspect of our existence is in total.
So let me ask you.
Is in total the experience of life.
Do you believe God is conscious?
Well, what I would say is that there's a logical way of understanding consciousness, and we're part of that consciousness. And if we're part of everything, then we have consciousness within the everything, of course. Do I believe it's directive? Do I believe God is directing?
No, but when you say everything is conscious, do you really think everything is conscious?
Well, no, I'm saying there's consciousness in everything, and everything is...
What does that mean?
Okay, so...
If I asked you the rock that you might be holding in your hand or something like that, if I ask you, does this rock have consciousness? What would you say? I'd
ask you back, is that rock solid?
Yes.
It's not.
It's not?
No. It's an electromagnetic field, isn't it? It's a set of electrons and neutrons. No. It's an electromagnetic field. You would agree that actually there's less matter in that rock than there is space.
I know.
So is it solid?
The molecules are attached very closely.
No.
That is exactly what a solid is.
No, that's a description of the thing. But actually, if we...
It is liquid. No one will say a rock is liquid or gas, would they? What is the other form left?
I think that's when people use those terms like solid, liquid, and gas.
You have to.
You can do, but from a molecular level, there's very little matter in this universe. Would you agree?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that from a molecular level,
even in molecules, it's electromagnetic, right?
From my studies in physics, is that chemistry maybe.
Okay.
These molecules are basically connected together very closely.
What are the molecules though?
In a rock, it could be, I don't know, whatever mineral it is. Okay.
Okay.
And in a liquid, those molecules are loose, and in gas they are even more distant from each other.
I think that's the difficulty from chemistry. You're talking about slightly more macro level of molecules than actually if you're talking about physics and particle physics and
true,
quantum
right?
physics.
True.
No.
Isn't that how solid liquid and gas are?
There's,
No.
No, I've heard that before.
I know. That is the other guy.
That's me.
Paperboy.
I've seen your YouTube channel.
Thanks, Jonathan. That's Paperboy.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, so actually in chemistry you'd be talking about elements matching together, but in physics and quantum physics you're talking about energy. So there is, when you zoom down to it, there is no. It is just electromagnetic fields in different patterns. So anyway, I mean, I know it's not totally semantics, but if you were to take the actual matter of, say, just this solar system into actual, that does actually come into it comes in similar to the Big Bang theory into singularity, and there's very little.
But do you think matter has consciousness?
So what I would say is that the way of those patterns of electromagnetism and all the particles which aren't particles, but all of that energy is in a sense does contain support.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
This brother would probably be much better than me entertaining that question. So the brother here is saying, we were discussing about matter, and I don't know, I believe that he's alluding to that matter as consciousness. Is that right?
Well, I mean,
if I misinterpret you,
no, I mean, even on a very basic level, we are conscious and we are part of matter, aren't we? So
we are aware of ourselves.
Yeah.
But a molecule and an atom, do you really think at that stage it's aware of itself?
Well, do you know about entanglement?
What,
Entanglement, the
what-
physics, not the Disney film. you know entanglement. So actually, there's a relationship between two molecules that are divided, that are entangled molecules, that have a relationship beyond time and space, and that you act on one molecule and the other will mirror it. So that's a summary of
Is that
entanglement.
a theory?
It's
Is it a virtual particles you're talking about?
no, they're
is this
actual
something-
particles.
is this
So
something
it's
that you
just,
can actually
it's the same. Your question, I suppose, there's what entanglement is one thing. Another thing of exploring consciousness of matter would be, the double slit light experiment. So if you've got the observer of, if you observe the light, it acts as a particle. If you don't, it acts as a wave. So there's a relationship between consciousness and that light, and that would imply that these are unanswered questions. So if you're asking me, we're going into stuff that can't absolutely be answered, but there's implication of
One of the things that you said was that we're matter and we're conscious.
I mean, I say on a macro level, we have experience of what we label consciousness, and we are also matter of what we label matter. So is matter consciousness,
No, but the thing is, you're assuming we're just matter. That's an assumption.
No, I'm assuming that our consciousness is linked to the matter.
No, that's fine, but your assumption also before that is that we're matter, right? We're made of matter, right?
Well, I'm not really. I mean, Hashim's gone down this road, but it was a bit of a dead end for you.
No, it was about me asking him, do you believe in God? And he says, yes, I believe in God. But not the personal God like the way we believe, but he believes that everything here,
Everything in the whole
that's how it's
possible experience is constitutes what could be called God, but could be any name, really.
The thing about that concept of God, right, is that concept of God is just,
Shall we move there?
it's just taking the universe itself.
Somebody else started another discussion behind us, maybe we can just move on it.
So the thing about, sorry, I didn't catch your name.
It's Mark.
Mark. My name is Sabul. So
Sabul.
the thing about that concept of God is that concept of God is the sort of God which philosophers came up with a few centuries ago. This sort of description that the universe itself is somehow the collection of everything. We can sort of call this God, or the sum total of all consciousness is God. the thing about this concept of God is this is not actually the traditional concept of God. This is kind of like
I started with that.
yeah, and the thing about this concept of God, this is kind of just like a atheism which is repackaged as a sort of palatable.
Can I stop you there a second, because we've gone through a discussion around peace, and then Hashim was asking me about my concept of God. But whatever, obviously, it's in conflict with traditional organised religion, so it's a different concept. Yeah.
And the thing, Mark, is that we want to see in life which concept makes more sense, right?
So the concept that I was talking to Hashim, are you going?
I'm here. Is it okay if I put one on you? Or
Yeah.
He's got three, I think you should at least have two.
They're increasing.
You have one. But the concept that I was actually starting with is actually a way to peace, really, within the belief systems that we have and the distressing thoughts that we have. And what was your view of
So
that?
basically, he asked me the question that what is it that causes you when if it's taken away, it causes the most distress? Yes, so I told him my deen, my belief in God. If that is something that is detached from me, I will feel distress.
The fear of detachment from God.
And because of the consequences of that as well. And when I asked you a similar, I think I related to a child.
Yeah.
I said, imagine you had a child, and this child was your world. This child is someone you love, you cherish, and if the child is taken away from you, you will be totally destroyed. I mean, yourself. So in that case,
But it's the fear of it being taken away. It's the fear of the
course.
child, the fear
because
of
your
God.
question was such that if this
The
happened,
thought, the distressing
this,
thought, yeah.
this analysis, this
Yeah.
if analysis, what if analysis, then
It wasn't a what if quite a what if. It was that you do have those distressing thoughts, like we might all have distressing thoughts, and in that moment they appear real, and that real causes the appearance of that reality of that thought causes us distress, and then that distress takes us away from the potential of us being at peace.
I remember now, you started a conversation that there is no suffering and no pain, it's all in the head. Is that right?
There's the only suffering we experience is through believing the distressing thoughts.
It's in the head, yeah.
The thing about what you're saying is that I agree with the idea that we need to look at the consequences of belief. So whether a belief is going to lead to happiness or a belief is going to lead to a situation where you're more content. But what's more important before that is the belief true?
That is my beginning point.
Okay.
Is questioning, is the belief true?
Okay.
And when we believe it's true, that causes us distress. We have lots of thoughts, but we don't believe they're true. But you're talking about finding a fundamental truth within a particular belief, I believe.
Yes and no. What I'm referring to is, like, we started off about God, right? So I have a concept of God. Which is
I
different to yours.
didn't, but
Oh,
you
sure,
did.
okay. But I think that's the first thing we should begin off in any conversation, because if we begin off with something else, it's like we're branching off without going to the root of the issue.
Well, root of your issue, though, because actually what I was talking about was peace.
Sure, but if we, for example, Mark, you say that a system leads to peace, I say a system leads to peace. Both of these are hypothetical, right? Right? Unless we know for sure that this has come from God, then we know it's not hypothetical, it's actually true.
Well, I would say that our discussion about that belief that you might have, like we might have any distressing belief, I think that through that understanding that, for instance, what you felt was more true was that God won't leave me. God won't leave me. That's the strongest
From
belief.
the four you gave me.
Yeah.
So one of them is that I will leave God, the other was will God leave you, and the other two were similar as well.
Similar, but
so from
the
that, the one that God will not leave me is a true, because obviously I will not.
And does that bring you more peace than what if I leave God?
If I leave God, I will not have peace.
No, if you compare, no, not the leaving of God, the having the thought. If you have the thought,
But they're two opposing.
no, but
each other.
we're
They're
not
the
talking
same.
about reality. We're talking about a thought. So in this moment,
God as well.
in
They're
this
two
moment,
opposing. One is you leaving God, and the other is God leaving you. They're not, they're not synonymous.
So what I'm comparing is, you might in the moment have a belief, what if God leaves me? Or you might have the alternative belief, which you believe more in reality, which is God won't leave me. So which one brings you more peace? You see how it's not actually relative to other...
The thing is, I agree with your point. I mean, not agree. I understand the concept you're trying to put forward. I'm not denying that. What I'm saying about that is it's still speculative at best. It's still a hypothetical thought experiment.
Actually, what I would say is that this is the thought that you have in that moment is, you know, in the moment that somebody might have a distressful thought, it is hypothetical. These are hypothetical thoughts that we have, but they seem very real, and we react to them as if they're real, and then that causes us fear, distress, and takes us away from peace. So actually, you could, you know, the angle of your kind of argument would be to say, yes, but what about God? What about religion? And all of those things. But actually, that's not where I'm coming from.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're basically saying, reality is not as important as our perception of reality.
I actually started by saying that peace is achievable and comes from understanding our distressing thoughts.
Okay, that's fine. But if you're going to make that idea, if you're going to make that claim, at best it's still going to be a thought experiment.
You know, I would say potentially everyone's here is in a thought experiment in the way that they argue or discuss about things. It's all you know, God and hell and, you know, the Trinity, or these are all effectively thinking about something.
Well, it's a method, but it doesn't mean that the concepts within that method are unreal. Like, for example, when I'm speaking about God or heaven or hell, I'm not referring to some Platonic concept which is just out there. I'm actually referring to something which I believe is real.
That you believe is real.
No, which I
that you believe is real.
Yeah, of course I believe it's real, but I also am making the positive claim that this thing is something which I can rationally explain to other people.
Well, you can explain it and you can believe it.
Yeah, of course.
But that's actually not the point.
But I believe that's important.
Oh yeah, I know, and that's why you're coming to me. But I was actually, I would say in response to what you're saying, is that your argument is actually this is just you know, thought experiment. It's not real. But actually, what we can find is that if we question all our distressing thoughts, we can find more peace in whatever our positive thoughts are.
But you know, when you say peace and when you talk about this, you know, everyone is different. Everyone is subjective. So maybe your idea of peace might differ from mine and mine from his. So who decides whose idea of peace should be established?
Well, only the individual's peace. So only the individual and the distress that somebody
We
is.
don't live as individuals. We live in a society.
No. But when you're at home alone, everyone's out. You're on your own, and you might have a distressing thought. And my definition of peace is actually without that. What would you be in that moment without that distressing thought, and without lots of distressing thoughts?
I'm not saying your idea is not incomprehensible. I actually understand it.
Or even incompatible. Even incompatible with Islam or Christianity or anything else.
I think it is incompatible, and the reason why it's incompatible is because in Islam we believe that as much as knowledge as human beings have, as many thought experiments they can come up with, the best knowledge that we actually have is the knowledge which comes directly from God. So if God says something leads to peace, then that leads to peace. Not what our limited minds tell us leads to peace.
So imagine if somebody's smoking something strong, some weed or something, yeah, they might think that they are at peace. Somebody drinking alcohol will think that they are at peace. But then, do you really think that is peace, or it is that perception of peace?
I think it's very personal. So that person smoking cannabis or drinking alcohol, it would depend on the content of their distressing thoughts in that moment.
But that's what I'm saying.
But also,
it's subjective, isn't it?
Well, we're talking about your peace is also subjective.
Yeah, but I know, but just